Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Duet Reviews. My name is Jillian Robinson. I am the Associate Artistic Producer here at Cup of Hemlock Theatre. And today I am joined by one of our incredible co-artistic producers, Ryan Borochovitz. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Jill. How are you?
I'm doing all right as well. I feel like it's been quite some time since we've done one of these duet reviews. It feels good to be behind the mic again.
Been a hot sec,
Yes, it
as the
has.
kids are saying.
Indeed. But what an amazing piece of art that Ryan and I are going to be chatting about today. We had the absolute pleasure to witness Kimiko's Pearl. So, Kimiko's Pearl is a new Japanese Canadian ballet that actually had its world premiere at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre at St. Catharines, June 22nd and 23rd, 2024. It is commissioned and produced by Bravo Niagara. And I really hope it gets remounted all over our country because it is such an important story, such an astonishing piece of art. We will get into all of our thoughts. But yes, so this piece is co created by Christine Mori and Alexis Spieldenner, written by Howard Reich, music composed by Kevin Lau, choreographed by Yosuke Mino, and it featured a pre-show drum performance by Nagata Sachu. So yeah, those are just the start of this exquisite journey. This also is going to be an emotional episode, I know for sure. I spent the entire piece extremely moved, weeping. Anyone who's listened to these duet reviews, anytime there is a dance piece, everyone knows my heart and soul just cracks wide open. So buckle up for that sort of flavor for this episode. Absolutely. So yeah. So Ryan, why don't you kick us off with
With an
our
icebreaker, perhaps?
exactly with our
hmm
icebreaker. You're ahead of the game. What is in
Yes.
your cup today, Ryan?
So I just have a lovely cup of coffee, but it is in our cup. There you go. Hey, that's
Nice.
our logo. How about you? What are you sipping on as we discuss this nourishing piece?
Yes, I am sipping on some nourishing coffee. I feel like I definitely need it today. It's in one of my favorite mugs, just says chocolate and chocolat and hot and show. So, yeah, it's a vanilla hazelnut coffee. And then I have some water going on because hydration station as always.
hmm
Great. Okay, so Ryan, take us on a summarized journey of Kimiko's Pearl.
Okay, so even though the run, this 2 day run that they had up in St. Catharines, down in St. Catharines for us, has come to an end, this is surely a piece that will have a robust afterlife. So, and I do encourage people to check this out when they get a chance, whenever that may be on the horizon. So, this will be a non spoiler summary, and then we will go into a spoiler section after this. Just wanted to put that out here. Oftentimes, when a run has ended, we debate whether or not we want to do those spoiler divisions, but yes, we will do the non-spoiler for this summary. Okay, so Kimiko's Pearl is a beautiful ballet piece that is about the Japanese internment camps that during World War II, you might often hear about that as something that is often treated as an American problem or something that happened in American history, but Canada was certainly guilty of it as well. And this is a dance performance about the Canadian history thereof and how specifically out west in British Columbia, where the vast majority of Canada's Japanese population was living at the time, when Canada declared war against Japan in World War II, the Japanese citizens were constantly shoved aside further and further, moved out of their homes, forced into various other locations until eventually they were in these flimsily set up internment camps where they had to live. And ultimately, many were forced to be deported back to Japan. So that is the macro history that we are examining here. But on a micro level, it's told from the perspective of a very particular family, 4 generations of that family, that culminates in a contemporary teenager named Kimiko of the title, who discovers her great grandfather's trunk, a wooden box that actually the real life counterpart of that box exists in the Canadian War Museum. But by sifting through the items that her great grandfather had brought from Japan to Canada, and then throughout his journeys across these various tumultuous political episodes, she's unpacking it and trying to, in her mind, retrace the story of what happened to these previous generations of her family. And through the beauty of dance, all of that is visualized before us. We see her great grandfather and great grandmother coming together, starting a life, and then the war happens, and then they are forced into the situation. We see their daughter, who is also part of this, their eldest daughter, who also defies the edict to be deported back to Japan and tries to make a life for herself in Toronto, where she falls in love and then has a daughter who we kind of see generations becomes the story that ultimately leads to our narrator type protagonist, Kimiko. Although this is all told completely wordless, I won't say silent, because there's beautiful music, as you said, composed by Kevin Lau. And just through the magic of dance and movement, projection, music, we see this vast tapestry of history told in such a beautiful, heartbreaking way. And one thing I'll say, we're going to talk more about this very interesting program they gave us.
Yes.
But one thing that you wouldn't necessarily realize watching it, but I feel is interesting to say in the summary here is that it's divided into 2 acts with an intermission. And Act 1 is titled The Struggle for Survival, and Act 2 is titled The Struggle for Identity. So even though after a certain point the war ends and you think therefore the story is over, we realize that the story does continue after that. And even when the immediate political historical duress of the camps themselves have been alleviated, there is still a difficult journey of integration, discrimination, and identity, and finding out what it means to be oneself that multiple generations have to struggle with. And the culmination of the story, which I won't really spoil, is how this all comes to bear on a young person today trying to retrace this history for themselves. How's that for a non-spoiler summary?
I think that's perfect.
Okay.
Yes. And I'm glad you did make reference to anybody watching this on our YouTube channel to this amazing program that they provided us with. It essentially is a booklet that includes, like Ryan said, it maps out Act 1, Act 2, and does include a textual story of what you are watching. However, I didn't get a chance to read that prior to watching the dance piece. And I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I was able to ingest the story just through a physical motion lens. But now I have this booklet to kind of cross-reference to the actual story. And then littered in this beautiful program too are like some costume sketches, museum facts, actual, articles, pictures, photographs of the people being talked about. Yeah, it's an astonishing program. I think we've got to chalk it up for the program.
It's a great keepsake for this experience that, like you said, I'm glad that I didn't read all of it in bitter detail before seeing the show, because I think some of it is better to experience in dance form without the accompanying words. But then having the words after the fact and all of these, beautiful images and designs. There's a little blurb here on the actual history itself. And there's we see the actual paintings that appear in the projections here, credited to the artists, all of which are actually very contemporary. They have this classical feel and look to them. But I think the oldest of them is from 2016, and most of them are just from the past couple years. So yes, really, it's a great keepsake to have accompanying this experience.
I mean, it's so lovely too, because in a piece that rests on, our Kimiko, unearthing all of these artifacts from her great grandfather. And I just think it's very meta. Like, this program is kind of like the journal that Kimiko unearthed and was sort of following through or trying to piece together. Like, this piece of theater has now created this on our bookshelves too.
I love that. Beautiful. And before we go into the post spoiler, do you want to talk briefly about the pre-show that also?
Yeah, because that's something that I don't know if this piece, if Kimiko's Pearl, like as we mentioned, there was a pre-show drum performance done by a trio by the name of Nagata Shachu that sort of created the atmosphere and the space. I think it's safe to affirmatively say, before we kind of went on this journey, this trio really did prime the audience for, how this piece should be listened to, how this piece should be observed and ingested. And It's one of these moments where it's like it's going to be hard to describe because it's all viscerally felt. So basically the trio did traditional like Japanese drumming. There was large drums, medium drums, and it was a series of pieces that for me conjured up different emotions, to be honest. Like some of them had upbeat tempo and there was sort of like a teamwork or a team mentality. There was like an element of hope that was flavored in that one. But then others were the drumming was like so fast or so slow. And so then that conjured up an emotion of anger or of longing or of sadness. And then like as this trio is just absolutely filling the First Ontario Performing Arts Center with sound, like it's they start again, I'm like getting emotional thinking about this. Like two of the performers decide to go into like a boat pose, like a full on core workout as they're playing these drums. And the one drummer is rigorous. So you're watching these bodies, these artists, these musicians, and you're like, oh, they're doing their thing, they're doing their craft. And then they're like, oh, they're doing their thing, they're doing their craft with every single morsel of their physical being. And it transcended performance and it was athleticism and it was just like humans at its rawest at it. And never were those drums going to stop. Like it just, I know Ryan and I have talked about this a lot, and I think I've peppered this onto some other episodes too, but where as actors, like we are athletes. And I think sometimes it's hard to remember that because a lot of the times the pieces we do aren't terribly rigorous on the body, mind, and soul all at the same time. But you watch a piece like this where every single element of your being as a human has to be laser focused and committed, and like the only place it is coming from is your heart and soul, because that's just the only way. And that's again, it's very difficult to describe unless you were sitting in that auditorium with everyone else, but it conjured up a feeling too of every single audience member was so enthralled by what was going on that the only thing we could do is hoot and holler or cry or clap. Like this trio was so, and again, like I said a couple paces ago, they were filling the auditorium with sound. And I think it was such a brilliant primer for Kimiko's Pearl, because again, the audience coming to see this show, maybe some of them are frequent ballet, spectators, but maybe most of them aren't. And I just thought it was such a great way of, again, priming our audience of like, we were about to go on a journey where you're not going to have words to tether to. You're not going to have songs to make you feel things. You're going to have to watch with your eyes, feel with your heart, and like listen. Like it's the music and the bodies that alone that are going to be telling the story. And I just think something so deeply rooted in such like a traditional Japanese sense that was Nagato Shachu's performance also was like, listen, this story is still for you. And I remember her name is escaping me, the individual who sort of like welcomed us into the space on behalf of the program. But she did mention Mary Ito, amazing. And such a kind soul, Mary. Also, what a wonderful way to like set us all up for this. She was saying, right, like this story, there are morsels of the story that are for you, even if this isn't part of your ancestry or this isn't part of your lineage. And I just think, yeah, by having that trio come and sort of prime us, and collectively we were able to absolutely like fully go on the journey of Kimiko's Pearl. Again, I don't know if you want anything to add there. I feel like I'm tangenting, but it's very difficult to describe like the emotional, visceral experience that.
No, and I completely agree. And like, I felt so many of the same things you were. And it was completely mesmerizing and so potently experiential. I like the closest thing I could compare it to was fireworks, just like the explosion of intensity of, yes, you are seeing something that is an aesthetic experience, even if there isn't necessarily a narrative or a story or something. It's just that, like, listen to the music we are creating. This, it felt like there was something ancient to it, something just like that. Really, yeah, like these are disciplined performers who have mastered this art, the three of them together. So perfect. And something that also occurred to me with it is that in like most Western musical traditions, drums are rarely the featured player in the band. That there's usually it's something that rhythmically kind of keeps the beat in the background. Maybe it'll get a solo of some kind and draw attention to itself, but that's an interlude. That's not the focus. Whereas the fact we did very briefly at the beginning of the performance have the Japanese flute as well, but for the most part, it was entirely percussive, this performance. And it's really just showing that in addition to drums in Western music traditions not usually taking the focus, there's also, unless it's like a large marching band, there's usually only one of them, that because it's such a loud, overpowering instrument that if you're trying to feature the other instruments, that you don't want to have too many of them because they could completely drown it out. But by putting three of them working together in this amazing harmony and picking up when one's slowing down, the other speeds up, and the precision was impeccable. And it was, truly, it just bowled me away. I was thrown back, but also leaning forward at the same time. And like, this is amazing. I can't even quite articulate why, but it just, you felt it in your bones.
Well, and I want to even add a little bit of like nerdy musical dramaturgy in the hollow, low resonance of the drums that were that are present in this piece, contrast to like the shrill chimes that were hit. Again, you said the flute sort of let us off. Like this whole pre-show performance was highlighting like the opposite spectrums of our emotions. Like it is said that like deep notes and like contrast with shrill notes conjure up different emotional responses. And like you just said, Ryan, too, like how they kept volleying and harmonizing each other. And there was never really like a space to breathe. There was constantly, it forced us all to cascade and expand our emotional palette. Again, like, so that we're ready to just get hit with whatever we need to get hit with. And then to add that to like the performers, like vocalizing occasionally as well. And again, from like a performance perspective, like it is known when you vocalize on like yelps or yells or large vowels, that conjures up an emotional, visceral response. So again, like, thank you to Nagata Shachu for making our emotional palette extremely ready for anything. And I do wonder if this piece gets picked up, like if that trio will go along with it. I think if they have it in the budget to do so, please, because I really do think it really just got us ready to talk about and live Kimiko's Pearl, which we should do now. However, we should probably, spoiler alert at this moment.
Yes. So we'll put a trunk on the screen and we will open it up, I suppose, and all the spoilers will come out. So
there we go.
Yes. All right.
So we're in spoiler zone.
Yes, we can talk about
this
anything.
This piece is perfect.
It's pretty great.
There's not a single thing about this that I would change, because it's one of those pieces where I felt like I was like a little kid in like Disneyland or something for the first time. Like I was constantly, my eyes were widening and I was like, oh my gosh, that, or that means that. And I was already so moved by it. We'll get into it, but by the music and the lighting choices and the storyline itself. But then like, it just kept getting like more things were dropped in. Like dramaturgically, this piece is, I want to say, probably one of the best dramaturged shows I've seen in a really long time. It weaved together the 4 generations that is the backbone of the story in every single element of theater. Like if we went through like lighting, costuming, music, like, which we'll talk in and out about, but every one of those elements of theater were, present in the 4 generations. The 4 generations were lifted by these elements. Like it was just such a beautiful marriage of history and art.
Mm-hmm.
And like, thank you to the team for doing that. And like, it's said too, like this has been like a 3-year project kind of in the making. And like, wow, it certainly has paid off. Yeah. Where do you want to start, Ryan? Like, what are you feeling?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Let me just think. Like, yeah, it was really
I mean,
incredible. Yeah. If you have
I can
something you want to
start
go,
wherever.
yeah, like please just, I'll jump off of you because like my thoughts are
Yeah.
swirling too with like, oh, I want to talk about so much, but we're going to grapple into
So
it.
I think what's a lovely place to start is the trunk.
Yeah.
And so the trunk rests downstage right throughout the whole performance. And Kimiko, our present day protagonist, constantly going back to the trunk and either like opening it up, unveiling another artifact, whether it be like a radio, whether it be like a journal. And there's a spotlight that kind of like starts on the trunk and ends on the trunk. So there really is that sort of like focal point that the story is definitely coming out of that trunk. So again, like I think maybe we start with like again, it's a minimalist sort of set and prop piece, but like everything was brilliantly placed or put into place. And a lot of the times too, when Kimiko goes to the trunk and opens up the journal as we see her read, or even her great grandfather, like as we see him writing, it is cascaded to the projections. So this piece had scenic projections basically that filled that. Yeah, it was like digitized set backing basically. So I loved that. Everything, every piece of paper that we saw, like every document of every piece of historical evidence was discovered or read by the characters, but then instantly was projected to the back of the screen. And again, there's that element of this is their story that we're on, but we're witnessing the like historical evidence and backlash of what they're reading. And again, the way that the characters even interact with those papers and in such a choreographed way, absolutely stunning. This, I guess, is getting into like costume territory, but the masks, talking about like choreography, like the mask work in this, the white masks to sort of represent colonialism, to represent sort of like isolation and where do you fit. Again, that was choreographed beautifully. The simplicity of just like a suitcase being like, this is the symbol of I am refusing to leave or I am having to pack up to leave. Like there was just the semiotics in this piece were phenomenal. Like, yeah, go take.
Yeah, like I'll say, like I've said in the past on episodes like this before, that dance does feel like a bit of a weak spot in terms of my own knowledge and appreciation of the various live performing arts, because like it's just a language all on its own that I haven't studied extensively. I don't have a large history with it, so I often struggle to, as much as I might think it's impressive and beautiful, it's hard for me to articulate why. But this is exactly my kind of dance show, I'll say in this. And that's because, and I think what's often missing from dance shows that I maybe struggle to articulate my thoughts about a little more is a clear narrative well told. Doesn't mean there's no narrative, but it does sometimes, that there's a lot more abstract, or you need to try to extrapolate, okay, I'm seeing the movements, but what is it trying to tell me? And sometimes there's not a story at all, and that's okay too. But we have a very specific family history, and it is our co-creators' actual family. They're the sort of two last generations on the sequence. And there is, just like I said, both the macro and the micro history of how this particular family represents this large experience that unfortunately plagued the lives of so many Canadian citizens at this very tragic historical juncture that should give us all great shame that this happened. And I think it's beautifully told in a lot of interesting ways. And what I would even say first is you could have a very beautiful, flawless version of this without Kimiko as our sort of framing device character here, looking through the trunk, reading the journal. And you could just stage very interesting scenes of the sort, but I'm glad they didn't. I see what the face you're making here, because to me, I think that was just like the cherry on top of the cake that kind of made the whole thing have this whole new layer of meaning that it is about. And especially because, yeah, like Christine Mori is sort of the Ellen character of the previous or second to last generation there. And Alexis Spieldenner is, I think, very much Kimiko incarnate in terms of who these last two characters represent that we meet here. They are our creators of this piece. And it is very much in like a post-memory kind of like Art Spiegelman mouse kind of way of trying to make sense of the past, and particularly a tragic World War II past in this way through our limited perception of the contemporary generation and trying to come to terms with these horrible events in the past. And I think like one of the most beautiful uses of the Kimiko character throughout is her attempts to intervene in what's happening in the past. Yeah, like when the RCMP officer comes in, she, dancing with him, but alongside him, but he's immovable and she's trying to stop him because you reading about this, you feel the sense of dread, you know what's going to happen. And because it's already happened, you feel entirely helpless to stop it, but that doesn't mean you don't want to. And the only way you could stop it would be to stop reading the journal and just like, I don't want to know what happened, but that doesn't make it not happen. And that this reflects towards intervention, and the futility of intervention was so beautifully staged in so many moments like that. You want to?
I want to just add to that too, because I was going to mention Kimiko being kind of inserting herself to help a character or deter a character, and it's a huge, representation of us living now and all of the sort of information and resources we have to unearth about our ancestry or to unearth about our past, but it is in the past. And there's, as much as we would love to change it or we want to go back and do it, so I loved that we had, like you just said, through the movement, through the dance, this language, this unspeakable language of like, this is what I would do, or this is what I want to do. Like, I wish I could go back and change time is what I kind of got through that. But then on top of that as well, as we see Kimiko discovering her history in the choreography of having Kimiko intertwine herself in the couples, like in her great grandparents, in her, create sort of like a safe haven for her grandma. Like there was so many pungent choreographed moments, and they were never beautiful. Because it was always, again, to me, in those moments where Kimiko was interacting, she was going through, like literally sometimes going through the arms or through in between the bodies or surrounding. And she was never allowed to necessarily like touch them. And it, to me, like in that moment, it just again showed, as much as there's also moments, can we go back and change the past? There's moments of like, how do I insert myself into this history? Or like, what is my identity in this? And I just kind of liked how the choreography wasn't always beautiful. It was kind of the way she pretzeled her way through some of the dancers was a little bit awkward or seemed displaced, but like that is exactly the narrative that's going on in her head, and yeah. Sorry, do you want to have something?
No, I love what you're saying here because by the same logic that you can't change the past, you also can't truly live in it because it is something that is absent. But then I think this final beat that we're left with of her unpacking what's left of the trunk, putting on the kimono, and having each of the previous generations pass the items to her, and then finally the pearl ring of the title is the only way you can live the past. This absent reference that you cannot really inhabit fully is to wear it with pride. And that is exactly what the previous generations were forbidden from doing. And that is the final note that we end on, her putting on the kimono and the ring and spinning one of the most beautiful pieces of choreography at the very end there, presenting it to us.
And do you want to know what was absolutely lovely? Again, a dramaturgical chef's kiss. And honestly, one of the most, probably for a very long time, meticulously dramaturged sign that I will see on a stage in a while is her contemporary outfit, her contemporary top is the same patterning of that final kimono. So to me, I instantly started bawling because it's like you've always had that inside of you.
Yeah.
You just had to unearth it, or like you've always, like, just because you don't know, you didn't, it just showed like it's inside of you. Like, I
Mhm.
guess I'll just stop there. Like, it's like your identity is your identity. And the fact that the kimono came over top and it matched her contemporary shirt perfectly,
Mhm.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm bawling my eyes out. Costuming, like,
Mhm.
astonishing across the board. I do want to roll back to, because we're in choreography land, the love duet
Mhm.
dances in
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
Wow. Showed first love. It showed confused moments in a relationship. It showed, how are we going to get over these obstacles? It showed, I miss you so much. I love you so much. All in like contemporary ballet point. Again, I'm not a ballerina, but if I could see this again and also alongside a dancer coming with me to see this, I would love to even more so excavate when the characters were on point and when they weren't. But I can already tell you, the moments that the characters did go up on point were either like to showcase like a larger moment or like an introduction of a moment, or to contrast like a point of tension. Like, and I bet you I could probably go into further if I were to see this piece again.
Mhm.
But I just thought, yeah, the use of when the dancers were flat-footed and when they were on point, astonishing. Obviously it's a ballet, so, and I
Mhm.
haven't seen a lot of ballets, so that's probably always dramaturgically present in every ballet show. But I just thought, in a piece where we are constantly in a state of tension and release, like, amazing. Like, go up on your toes and then go down on your heels. Like, in a piece where we're finding our footing, in a piece, where is your ground? Where do you belong? Like
Mhm.
Japan, Vancouver, like the foot, like, it just, or like, tracing the footprints of your past. Like, it just, like, there's no other genre that could have told this story.
Mhm.
So yeah, and the synergy of this entire cast was astonishing. And even in the moments where it was a bit more scene heavy, but movement wise, just the gestures and the facial expressions, again, like, I don't need words for this.
Yeah.
This is it. This medium is exactly how this piece should be ingested.
I feel like we haven't like named any of our dancer performers yet. I don't know if we
Mm.
necessarily need to single any of them out. They were all excellent, but maybe we should just give them all a shout out here. I don't know. Let's find the page.
Yeah,
Yeah, do you
sure.
have it handy? Because yeah, they all did.
Yeah, so
Excellent.
apologies if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name. Dancers, we have Kimiko, played by Akira Sue. We had, I guess I'm just going to go down and list all the
Sure. Yeah, sure.
dancers. Yushi, Chen Jin Liu, Liam Keynes, Rachel Gibbs, Liam Sato, and Yayo Bon.
Yeah,
There was
excellent work.
also, yes, astonishing.
Mhm.
And there was also like an ensemble of,
Mhm.
classic and like ballet opera. You have like ensemble members that sort of fill a larger number. So, and that was sprinkled with kiddos. It was sprinkled
Mhm.
with older folks. It would just, again, was a wonderful representation of multiple generations that, have experienced this history.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
There's a lot. There's a lot we could keep talking about. The
there's so much.
projections, again,
Yeah.
going back to the projections and the lighting, like, again, that alone could be its own show. I would love to also just watch the show just via projections. 'Cause it's like you're watching a scrapbook at the same time you're watching a map, at the same time you're watching like um history, like a museum of documents. And again, and I like that this piece chose to digitize all of those elements. There wasn't like a tactile set,
Mhm.
because I think once again, it's bridging this is a historical moment, but shown in present day in a digitized
Mhm.
form. And again, it's taking us past to present. And it's, again, there was repetition of some of those images that conjured up tears in me as well. Some of the projections seemed like they were breathing, especially when the great grandparents were like sowing the fields, and like you actually like saw the growth of their love and of that harvest kind of like come out of the pixels of the screen. Like, everyone needs to see this show. Everyone needs to pick this up. Every single province needs to do this show, please.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that you just brought up because it's really interesting. So the idea of the digitizing the documents as like a bridge between past and present. That's such a good observation, something that hadn't occurred to me, because yes, for the most part, when we engage in histories in this way, it is mediated through screens today. Like, that is the way we do it. And yet what I actually think is even more interesting about that is that we still have the tactile objects on stage, because that's what fills the trunk. And that is what Kimiko is sifting through and looking at. She picks up a document and then we see it on the screen. So it's almost like you still have the originals there. They still bring this kind of aura to the artifact themselves. But what is being done by putting it all up on the screen is making the small object visible to the whole audience. It is increasing the reach through which this story can be told and the audiences that are able to access it. Like that, it's the perfect blend of tactile and digital, each serving a different function in how the story is accessed and how it is told.
Okay, and here comes the tears.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yep. And then let's also just chat about the music. So it's constantly engulfed with its stunning score. And even just like the stereophonics, I guess, is that the word to use here? Like the acoustics.
It's on Broadway right now.
Of the acoustics of the space, and like in the moments of tension, like literally the speakers are rattling, but it's like it has to, because there's stuff rattling inside of us watching this and rattling inside of our characters. So I just found like the sound levels of this. How do you put dramaturgy in sound levels? I don't know, but they did it. Like, they cranked everything up when the emotions needed to be cranked up, and they brought everything down. That's only in the levels, let alone the quality and the precision of instrumentation that was used in this piece. I would love like a score of this. Like,
I think they actually, I recall from this very handy program that there is an album, The Music of Kimiko's Pearl, which is coming in fall 2024.
I'm going to get that. That's what I'm going to get. Thank you, Kevin, for doing that. Thank you, Kevin, for all that you do.
And for whoever produced it, if that is Bravo Niagara themselves. I don't know if there's a full credits here. Thank you to everyone involved in preserving this music and allowing us to access it beyond the closed confines of the performance itself.
Yes.
And shout out to all the musicians who play the instruments as well.
Absolutely.
Fantastic work.
Absolutely. I think, honestly, we could leave it there.
Yeah, I'm content with that.
We've infused all of our thoughts, but again, this is not the end of this piece. I would be
It better not
shocked.
be. Somebody pick this up if it hasn't already found a home already.
It is such, I feel, as a Canadian artist, like, this piece of work is like, makes me proud to just witness this and have this be a part of our canon, of our performance canon. Yes, like I said, it used every element of performance, of theater, every element of ballet, every element, like, it talk about macro to micro, like, it's not just dance. It's specifically this type of dance. It's specifically this type of dance in this specific moment. It's specifically this type of dance in this specific moment because of this specific emotion. It's specifically this type of dance in this specific moment because of the specific emotion, because of the specific piece of history that needs to be unearthed.
Well
and it's, yeah, I'm at a point where I'm speechless, because once again, my heart and soul and waterworks are vibing.
And as Mary said in her pre-show intro, that this is a story that for so long has gone unspoken. So doing it through the nonverbal language of dance is an appropriate way to tell it in the most potent way imaginable.
And honestly, more powerful. And I know I've said this on all of our dance reviews. There is something way more powerful in human movement that puts any like text and singing, in my opinion, to bed because you're forced to listen when there's nothing to listen to.
Yeah.
And I don't mean forced as in like a rigorous way, but you are, when there is nothing to listen to, you actually, in my opinion, I think, especially in the form of art, you listen more intently.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. On that note, I
All
think
right. We
that's where
can
we should
close the
leave that.
trunk.
Closing the trunk on this iteration. So again, this was Kimiko's Pearl. It was commissioned and produced by Bravo Niagara. It had its world premiere at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre, June 22nd to the 23rd, 2024 in St. Catharines. We will pop all of these details below too, just so that it is preserved. And we have our programs to continue preserving of this wonderful piece. And we please, like every single establishment that can house a ballet, take this piece on. This piece should be danced from east to west coast of Canada and
Sea to
beyond in the
shining sea.
world. But like, let's definitely have it engulf our country because, yeah, it is a part of our history that needs to be unearthed and needs to be heard and listened to and seen and felt and supported. So,
Mhm.
Miko's Pearl, I look forward to seeing you down the line. Any other final comments from
I
yourself,
think
Ryan?
that that's good for me. We can, yeah, close the trunk
Great.
on this one.
So, again, just if you are listening or watching this wonderful episode of Cup of Hemlock Theatre, again, I love that we get to do what we do, Ryan. This is great and support new works. Go ahead and like, share, subscribe on our YouTube page. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and anywhere you listen to your podcast, we are on there as well. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment if you will. I took your job, Brian. Usually
You
you
beat me
sign
to
us
it.
off with that.
Well, because I don't
Um,
have personal socials I want to plug, and you usually do. So no point finding to
right.
follow me, but follow Cup of Hemlock in all those places. How about you, Jill? Where can people find
Great.
and follow you? You just wrapped a musical.
I did a new Canadian musical as well. Yes, people can find and follow me my artist Instagram account, Jillian.robinson96. And yes, I just wrapped a musical, Tommy Rhodes. It was a phenomenal experience. Again, hopefully we'll have another life soon. We are popping into a recording studio to kind of play around with some stuff, demos and whatnot. So stand by on that. And yeah, keep up with my page for future projects down the line. But on
Nice.
that note, I'm going to finish my coffee, drink some water, and continue on with our day. Everyone, stay safe. See works. Fringe is coming up upon us. So go out and continue seeing Canadian works. And we'll see you next time on the Cup.
Cheers.
Cheers.